Last night I watched Wag the Dog, and it was the first time I'd seen this movie since it came out in 1997. Now, I know this is a classic, and I know that it's the movie that almost immediately was referred to. Uh, it became almost immediately relevant when, like a year later, when Clinton was got into trouble with the charges that were brought against him, um, and he the very next day started bombing. Where was it? Was it just places in the Middle East? It was like he immediately shifted or attempted to shift where the story was going, where people were paying attention to, and everybody was saying, "Hey, this is the Wag the Dog. This is Wag the Dog all over." So I always saw the movies. I understood and respected the movie for its relevance in that regard, but it didn't make a huge impact on me. And watching it again was really quite a bit more of a revelation. Seen from today's perspective, this has got to be the most prescient movie. This has got to be the biggest revelation of the method in cinema history that I can think of. You know, maybe there are others that that are not occurring to me that right now that are even more of a you know, yep, this is what we're up to. Yep, these are the kind of things we do. Ha ha ha. But this movie in particular, you know, if you really paid attention to it all the way, it's not just about how you know, politicians make efforts to spin the news cycle or whatever, to use I hate all that jargon. I hate all that news related jargon. But it's not just about that. It's about how the media is completely manufactured, or can be, or you know, often is, because there's a sequence in Wag the Dog. They decide to if you don't remember the movie, they decide to invade Albania to shift the focus of everybody's attention from the president's sexual scandal to war, and they choose Albania because nobody knows much about Albania, and so it's easier that way. But they decide to tell people that the Albanian terrorists have this nuclear technology, and they're about to use it, and so we need to invade to Albania to free ourselves of this terroristic threat. This is in 1997. This is 4 years before 9/11, obviously. So it's very prescient in that regard as well. But also, you see them using technology. You see them splicing stuff together. You see them using CGI, green screens. You know, they have an American girl playing a young Albanian maid fleeing the destruction in her town, played by Kirsten Dunst. First, I think, movie she was ever in. Didn't recognize her at the time. And they have her. They don't know. They want her to be holding an animal of some kind just to up the pathos factor, but they don't know what kind of animal they want to put into her arm. So they instead having her hold like a bag of potato chips. And then they splice the cat in later. But that showed that even in 1997 they had that kind of technology. And you know, I think because I was just a normie conservative back then, in my mid-20s, recently married, working as working as a substitute teacher, trying to make it training for my first and thus far only marathon, all the things that were going on in my life in 1997. You know, I was a normie, and I think it was much more normal to be a normie, if that makes sense. I don't think that, you know, the whole notion, well, the idea of the red pill hadn't yet been introduced filmically, but the whole notion of seeing beyond the veil and what's today called, you know, conspiracy and all that, it was much less mainstream at the time, and it was much more just sort of a, you know, among people who were conspiracy theorists, it was just sort of a charming, often charming, you know, kind of eccentricity or affectation. Whereas today it's seen as plain old dangerous to be a conspiracy theorist, because, and the reason for that is because it's become so much more mainstream, because so many more people have gotten hip to the fact that the things that they show us and the things that they tell us are complete lies and fabrications, and the news that they pump out is so often simply manufactured and astroturfed. But all this wasn't, you know, it was a, dare I say, a more innocent world